Hello, I'm Harry Cole. This is Never Mind the Balance, and joining me today is a famously publicity-shy politician granting us a rare intervention. One-time Tory leadership contender, now Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick is here.
Good to be here.
You're everywhere, though. You're not just on justice. You're talking about Chagos, you're talking about China. Are you a sort of one-man leader of the opposition in opposition to the leader of the opposition?
Look, I just think that the Conservative Party has to be out there providing the strongest possible opposition to the government. And on all of those issues, there is so much for us to be campaigning on. That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, OK, let's go through a few things. There's a story in The Sun this morning about electric cars. So the MOD, just sums up Britain. The MOD have hired, on the cheap, electric cars to meet loads of green targets. And, you know, they've got them from China. And it turns out that the generals are being whizzed around in these cars. They used to take helicopters, now they take electric cars. And it turns out that they're so concerned about the Chinese listening and bugging and sending what is said in the cars that our generals can't talk about anything to do with the MOD in the cars. This is nuts, right? What is going on with this country?
Look, I think it's completely ludicrous. Firstly, it's very sad that you've got a great British brand like MG that's now been taken over by the Chinese, but you've got our armed forces who are taking vehicles which might be a risk of being spied upon by the Chinese. Call me old-fashioned, but I take the view that our military is there to fight wars, and I want them to focus on lethality and nothing else.
Why is the MOD buying cars from China when we are literally, you know, we consider them to be a hostile threat, whether we admit it in public or not? But what is going on with this country? Why are we doing such, you know, sort of self-harm all the time?
Well, this is clearly deeply naive, and the armed forces should not be doing this. But there is a broader question here, isn't there, that our politicians, the British state, needs to grow up, understand that we're living in an increasingly dangerous world, and put the interests of the British public first. On issue after issue, Chagos is
exactly. I was just about to say
that is not happening.
We're paying
right
£9 billion to Mauritius to take away a British sovereign territory where we run what is, we're told by the government and Keir Starmer himself, is a vital strategic security asset, Diego Garcia. Why are we paying the Mauritians to take away something we need?
Look, I think this is one of the worst deals that I can remember. You know, we are giving away British sovereign territory to an ally of China, and we're paying them for the privilege of doing that. We don't know the precise amount because Keir Starmer won't be honest and come to Parliament and tell us. But we hear in the Mauritian Parliament that it could be anything from 9 to 18 billion pounds. And bear in mind, think of what your viewers are going through at the moment. Times are tough. This is a government that's taking away people's winter fuel allowance. It's a government that is imposing new taxes, like on farmers, so they can't hand their farms on to their kids and their grandkids. And at the same time, they're finding billions and billions of pounds for this. And this is something that Keir Starmer could end tomorrow. I want him to come to Parliament to say that the Chagos Islands are British, they will always be British, that these legal judgments are non-binding, and they will always put the interest of the Britich public first.
The argument that the government and the deep state, to coin a phrase, and, you know, the security world, the securocrats, easy for me to say, make is that there is no standstill option. Because of this non-binding but ultimate UN judgment, it means that in the next 20 years, it's going to start to seep into different regulators, like the satellite regulator or the telecoms regulator, who carve up essentially airspace that we, you know, as a sovereign owner of Chagos can use. And actually, if we don't do that, there's a risk that we end up sort of being regulated out of our sovereignty. They've got a point there, haven't they? They've got to do something.
No, well, firstly, Keir Starmer was in Parliament this week saying that there was some, you know, secret intelligence.
Yeah, which is basically we are using Diego Garcia to spy on the world and maintenance our nuclear arsenal.
The previous Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, former Prime Minister, somebody well versed in security matters, he heard the same advice and put the whole deal on ice.
Yeah.
So that is complete nonsense. What is required here is somebody with guts and gumption who would say very clearly, we are not giving away the Chagos Islands. We are not going to bow to non-binding international court judgments, and we are going to protect our national security interests. See what Donald Trump is doing with US interests. We are living in an age now which is marked by realism. You've got to put the interests of your own country
Someone
first.
said the easiest way to sell this deal to Donald Trump was to tell him it broke international law. He's got a point there, hasn't he? To stray dangerously onto your turf. What is it about this government that, is suddenly, dancing to the sort of international sort of, non-binding UN resolution ICJ tune in a way the previous government wasn't. Is it a conscious decision, do you think, that to start basically living by the absolute letter of every single law?
I think it is, and I think it's the character of Keir Starmer, a former human rights lawyer, and the circle that he's had around him, the Attorney General he's appointed.
Well, Richard Hermer,
Lord
a man
Hermer,
that you've been
the...
winding up pretty successfully by all accounts over the last few weeks. Tell us, who is this guy, what does he want, and why are you so angry with him?
Well, Lord Hermer is one of Keir Starmer's oldest friends, former colleague at Matrix Chambers, where they worked together, a donor to his leadership campaign.
Yeah.
This is a man who places strict adherence to international law above all else.
He's the lefty lawyer's lefty lawyer, right?
He is the ultimate subscriber to this, who cares about his reputation on the gilded international circuit above the interests of the British public. This is a man best known to your viewers as Gerry Adams's former lawyer. He has represented some of the most controversial causes and individuals in modern times, from Kemi Badenock to case against British special forces.
There's not a passing baddie he hasn't got on the bandwagon.
And he has now got involved in this negotiation for the Chagos Islands. And the point that he is making is that we should put international law, rigorous adherence to that, above the security interests of the British
and the
public.
financial interests of this country, right?
I think that is
9 billion quid.
It's just selling out the British public. It is something that is completely disgraceful. I think that Keir Starmer should come to Parliament, be honest about what he's spending this money on.
Look at that. The role of Attorney General was a fascinating one. I mean, the one that people will remember is that Boris Johnson basically put Suella Braverman into that role. Yes, she's a lawyer, but she's also a politician. Because you don't have to, you can, it is an inherently political role, right?
Well, the role of the Attorney General is not purely to be a lawyer. It is to be a politician and a lawyer, to be somebody who is the advisor to the Prime Minister and who understands the balance that you have to strike between the law, international law, and the interests of the British public. And I think time and again you're seeing Keir Starmer working in tandem with Richard Hermer to take positions which are completely against the interests of the British public. Things are not common sense.
So the view of the opposition, the view of the Conservative Party is no deal, just carry on where you go, and when our satellites get turned off, or they're
not going to get turned off.
Presumably, China and Russia and other countries and America are charging around the world, ignoring all this stuff, right?
Can you imagine any other self-respecting country today who would do this act of national self-harm? And the idea that by giving away our sovereign territory, we're somehow going to gain soft power that will make other countries respect us more in the world is complete nonsense.
Let's talk about
our credibility in the world will be diminished, not enhanced, by taking this forward.
So let's move on from Hermer. He is on your patch. Let's talk about another thing on your patch. Let's talk about immigration and justice, which is you obviously the former Justice Minister. You're the former Immigration Minister. You're now Justice, now the Shadow Justice Secretary. Foreign criminal deportations are up 23% under Labour. That doesn't fit your narrative that, they're the sort of soft guys and they got it wrong. How have they managed to improve deporting foreign criminals in a way that you were unable to do when you were in office?
Well, the small improvements that
23%, that's it.
Well, from a low base. The small improvements.
Well, it's a low base from the Tories.
Well,
right?
I am, as I've come on your programme many times.
Well, Priti Patel sat there last week and didn't apologise.
I've been a fierce critic of the
failings.
mistakes that were made in the past.
Yeah.
The number of foreign national offenders being removed from this country fell precipitously during COVID and then has slowly rebuilt over time. Good work was done in the last year or so of the Conservative government.
Yeah.
The Labour government is now seeing the benefits of that. But it is not enough. I'm not defending what happened in the past. I don't think what's happening now is good enough. I want us to take a much more muscular approach where we use all the levers of the British state. If a country is not taking its foreign criminals back, we shouldn't be giving them foreign aid.
Right.
We shouldn't be providing visas for them.
Are you enjoying seeing what Donald Trump's doing? Are you enjoying seeing what Donald Trump and Elon Musk have done for foreign aid?
I think what he is demonstrating is that other countries do respond to strength. And the British public want to see politicians with guts who are going to take forward the interests of the British public and are willing to prosecute those with real
Now
strength.
you're in opposition.
That's what we should be doing.
Now you're in opposition, though. You must be banging your head looking at all of the things that the Tories got wrong. Justice, again, another one. There's a litany of problems that the Tories didn't get right. Tories basically opened 5,000 new prison places in 14 years of government. The previous Labour government did 27,800. What were you guys doing in power that just meant you were so basically? You just fell so short.
Well, on that particular issue, I don't think that's quite right. I've
got the numbers here. Let's do the numbers. You opened 13,000 new prison places under the Conservative government, but 12,500 prison places were closed. So a net of 500.
But that's because, quite rightly, the previous Justice Secretaries like Michael Gove sought to close the old Victorian prisons that had existed at the time. So net, the last Conservative government actually added more prison places than prior Labour governments did. But that is not to say we shouldn't be building more. I want us to be building more prisons. You know, one of the things that I've been campaigning on is that we should be locking up career criminals, the kind of people who are committing the vast majority of crimes. We should be locking them up for longer. I don't believe in what I think the Labour government is likely to do, which is cutting short sentences so that you can nick mobile phones, do theft or burglary or tool theft and get away with it. But we do need to be building more prisons and faster.
Isn't the problem, though, that on all of these things, you make very valid points, you're being very vocal, you're out there, you're everywhere, you're doing interviews, you're tweeting, but frankly, there's a credibility gap in that no one really believes anything the Tories say because 14 years wasn't that long ago, and you've got this record around your necks, essentially, that is dragging you down.
Look, I think it's going to be a long road. And we have...
Do you think the Conservatives will win the next election?
I think we can win the next election. But
Can Kemi Badenock win the next election?
Yes, I think she can. But I don't underestimate how difficult it's going to be because, you know, your viewers are angry with the Conservative Party.
Right, and more than angry.
The failures
livid.
that... I agree. You know, and I share some of that. You know, ultimately, I resigned.
You are angry with the Conservative Party.
I resigned from the cabinet because I felt that we had failed on immigration.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a long road. We are beginning that journey now. The announcement we made for today, for example, changing the path to British citizenship is a good step forward to begin to rebuild trust on immigration.
We had one policy in 6 months. You know,
look, it's going to take time. What I want us to do is to very slowly, step by step, regain the trust of the voters that we won in 2019, working people across the country. That is who I want the Conservative Party to represent.
Do you sign up to Kemi Badenock's plan of essentially it's a 3-year project of basically you're going to spend the first year self-flagellating, apologising, regaining trust, the second year sort of showing that you've changed, and the third year of presenting policy? Surely you need more policies to fight now rather than just doing a pity tours at the TV studios saying everything was shit.
Well, I do think it's going to take time because for all the reasons you've just set out.
Have you got time,
the public
though? You've got Nigel Farage breathing down your neck.
Look, my style is to get out there, to work hard, to try to regain the public's trust. And I do believe that opposition requires street fighters. You've got to be out there making the argument every single day. But I do think
implicit criticism there of what the opposition are doing because
I don't think that's right.
You're out there, but she is. She's not.
Well, today, Harry, Kemi has just announced an important policy, which is a good step forward. I don't pretend it's the end of the road, but it's the first step in that path to regaining trust on immigration. But I do think it's going to take time because people feel rightly very angry.
How is Kemi doing? Obviously, you lost out the Tory leadership election too. How is she getting on? Yesterday, you know, talking to your shadow cabinet colleagues after PMQs, it wasn't great. She was kind of all over the place. She went on Rosebank oil. She had him on the ropes on Chagos and then just moved on. She ignored all the lockdown stuff. Is it working? Is the Kemi brand working? Look, her style of leadership?
Firstly, it is 3 months into what is likely to be a 4.5-year parliament. So there's a long time. You know better than anybody how much can change in just a few years in British
Boris
politics.
Johnson, 81 seats to the Tories.
5 years ago, you and I might have been sat here. I was in Boris Johnson's cabinet.
You were.
We were before COVID had even struck. So a lot will happen in the years ahead. What I think Kemi is right to say is that we begin this journey by being painfully honest about the mistakes that we made on immigration,
but aren't you just feeding the Farage beast? If you and Kemi and your shadow cabinet colleagues basically saying everything was rubbish, and then try to present some alternative, but actually, if you want the alternative from a right-wing perspective, it's standing there behind you in Parliament in the form of Nigel Farage. You're doing his work for him, aren't you?
No, I don't think so. I think we have to regain people's trust and confidence first, and that will be a slow process.
Right. So what's the time frame? When are the Tories going to overtake Labour and reform
there
in
was
the
a
polls?
poll out yesterday, actually, which showed the Tory
margin of
party.
error. Yeah, there's a litany of polls that have
obviously, it's a
you.
very challenging situation. It's going to take time. We've got to completely rebuild the offer of the Conservative Party in the country. Kemi is right. In fact, this was the first speech that she made, was to focus on immigration, because that really is the cornerstone of the issue here. We made big promises, not just at the 2019 election, but in every election in my adult lifetime. We didn't fulfil those. We made a serious, serious mistake on immigration. We can begin to regain people's trust if we're honest about that.
In the reality, though, what happens with reform? Come down to it. We'll let you go in a second. But what happens with reform? At some point, they are going to be consistently ahead of you in the polls. At what point do the Tory party say, you know what, if you add up reform and the Conservatives, you're on 45, 50% of the market. Why don't you do a deal?
Well, firstly, Reform themselves have said they don't want to do it.
You're splitting the Reform vote.
Reform has said repeatedly
that they have they're going to say that now. That's the art of the deal, isn't it? They're good negotiators.
Said they have no intention of doing this. Kemi has said that she doesn't want to do it either. We are two separate.
You've got to have a non-aggression pact at the very least, right?
My whole mission is to bring home all the small C Conservatives in this country back to the Conservative Party. We should be their natural home. We're not at the moment because of the mistakes that we made in office, the very serious mistakes. It can be done.
Final question. Would you be doing better in the polls if you were the leader of the opposition?
Look, Kemi is our leader.
Go on. That's a politician's answer.
I stood to be leader.
Would the Tories be better in the polls if you were the leader?
It's a nice question to ask.
Was that a no? I think I heard a no.
But look, Kemi is our leader. I chose to serve in the shadow cabinet because I believe that she can be a success and she's working extremely hard. I think it's going to be a long road. That is what we have to accept.
Robert Jenrick would not be doing better than Kemi Badenock?
Harry, look, what we're trying to do here is turn the Conservative Party around under Kemi's leadership, and I'm here to support her in everything that
I thought you were a straight-talking, honest kind of guy, but there we go. Apologies answer. Robert Jenrick, thank you very much for joining us on Never Mind the Balance. Subscribe on YouTube, and we'll be back. See you next week.